really the core of the course is really the core of real estate investing. So this goes back to what's a deal maker mean? Like a deal maker has five kind of core skills that I have found to be really important for me. And then as I've taught other people to buy their next deal, have been important to them. So let's list the five because I think that'll help through the idea of what kind of skills you're building. Number one is analyzing your market. So you mentioned, some terms like MSA, which is called a metropolitan statistical area. You can think about it kind of like zooming out in Google Earth. Like the farther out you get, there's some trends that you need to understand: population, demographics, economy, things like that. And then when you zoom in really closely on Google Maps, you want to see like neighborhood by neighborhood, which neighborhoods have benefits that you're looking for. So understanding and picking a target market is like step number one of the course. Step number two is learning how to analyze the numbers, run the numbers. Real estate's a math game. That doesn't mean you have to be a math genius. Like a lot of people I've worked with in the course have been really intimidated by math. And one thing I try to do is just break it down into something you could do on the back of an envelope. Seriously, like if you can learn a few formulas and you can do some like adding and subtraction, maybe a little bit of algebra, you can on the back of an envelope figure out through looking at like 4 or 5 different formulas whether this deal makes sense or not. And the great thing about house hacking is one of the simpler, not that it's easy, but it's one of the simpler analysis, of real estate investing. You need to see like what's the price of the property, obviously, but then what kind of cash flow can you make so that you can get closer to living for free. So house hacking, how do you run the numbers? That's part two. Part three is the financing that I mentioned earlier. There are so many sources of financing, and I sort of look at it like a toolbox. And when you're first starting, let's just get you with one tool. Let's just learn how to use a hammer. Let's learn how to use a screwdriver, And over time, as you become more of an expert real estate investor, you can start adding more and more tools in there, like private financing, creative financing, home equity lines of credit, hard money, lease options. There's so many different tools that are out there. And so just know that those tools are out there. But as an investor, you just need to learn one or two, get good at those, get pre-qualified. And that's part three of the course. Part four is building your team. And I've always been a sports player. I've always played football, basketball, soccer. So I've just always valued the people around me. And I just realized that there's an old quote from John Wooden, who was a Hall of Fame basketball coach, that said, making you an all-star is having an all-star team around you. I'm kind of paraphrasing what he said. Like if you want to be a star, you've got to have great people around you. You can't do it all yourself. Even if you're a DIY person who fixes stuff yourself, that's fine. But real estate is still a team sport. So building a good team is what we do in part four. And you've actually helped me out with this, is building some scripts. Like what kind of questions do you ask a real estate agent? What kind of questions should you ask the property manager? You don't want to have to reinvent the wheel if you've never done that. So we kind of train you on talking to people. And then step number 5, which is one of my favorites, just because I think it's the most difficult, challenging part of the business for people, is how do you find deals? How do you actually, and this is so relevant right now in today's market, when things are competitive and everybody's bidding up properties, like I don't go there. Like I don't get into situations where I'm competing with 20 other people to buy a property. It's going to be really difficult to win in that situation. What you want to do is find properties that people aren't paying attention to, either in parts of town that people aren't paying attention to, or by looking off market and doing some marketing, some lead generation. And some of that could be low cost, by the way. If you want to spend more money on ads and, all sorts of different, you can reinvest money in marketing. But some of this is just getting out of the neighborhood, driving for dollars, getting referrals, calling for sale by owner signs. So I go through a list of things and actually give you 17 different campaigns that you can pick one or two of those, kind of like a cafeteria, and learn how to run the numbers. So all of that, those are the five kind of core skills. And I have found that I kind of create some milestones along the way. So it's like a map. Like you look at a map and say, I need to do step 1, and don't get overwhelmed by all the other steps. Let's just do step 1. Then let's do step 2. Then let's do step 3. And we have a lot of accountability. And we have a lot of group. I have TAs in the course. Bradley was one of those. So I'm proud to just introduce all the people in the course to people who've been successful. Like that, success leaves clues. And there are people like Bradley and other TAs in the course who are a few steps ahead of you, and you can watch how they've done that. And they can give you advice that's different from my advice sometimes, which is great. And so that community aspect, the milestones, the course, the fundamentals, I found to be a really productive way to get you unstuck. Like if you're just kind of like, man, I just don't know what my next steps are. I got all the information. I'm just a little overwhelmed. Breaking it down into those basic step-by-step processes, and then having a community and kind of support and accountability. That's a good recipe for making progress down the road.
Yeah, for sure. And, with this podcast, we don't spend a whole lot of time promoting other people's work. I mean, that's not really, but for your course, it honestly, especially that back of the napkin analysis, for somebody like me, I am one of those that, math is not, especially analyzing deals. It's not something I like doing. It's not something I'm really good at. I'm very creative, and I'm able to, that's where value add. And so not everyone's like me, but being able to quickly decide whether a deal has the potential or not was incredibly helpful for me. And you had, 6 different criteria for that. And it quickly allowed me to analyze deals at a high rate and then go into further depth down the road. But, what got me stuck in the wheel there for a while was trying to analyze deals, over analyzing deals, and taking too much time. And so that was incredibly helpful.
Yeah, I mean, we all get there, right? Like, and I'm not opposed to spreadsheets. Like, I like spreadsheets. It's fun to get nerdy on that. But I found sometimes people, particularly people who get too much into the spreadsheets, will overanalyze everything, and that's difficult as a new investor. And I'll go back to Warren Buffett again, right? Warren Buffett says if he's buying $1 billion, like he's spending $10 billion on a business. So this is a whole nother level. But he says if he has to use a calculator or a computer to run the numbers on his $10 billion deals, it's not a good deal. Like, that's amazing to me. Like, Warren Buffett's stroking a check for $10 billion, but the reason that's the case is that you don't want to be like precisely right. You want to have a big gap. You want to have like a margin of safety. If you run the numbers with using 2 or 3 different formulas, if it's just so tight that you're just like, man, I don't know, what if I tweak this number? If you're having to tweak a bunch of numbers, it's not a good deal. Like, it should just kind of jump off the page at you. And if it's not, then move on to the next deal. I guess that's the point of the back of the envelope analysis. It's not that you shouldn't go into more depth and run the numbers even more in depth, but that first pass, when you're really running the numbers, that's the reason I emphasize that so much, is that you need to get good at the basic formulas like you have, Bradley, and then you'll increase your confidence. And you can always go get some other people to help you look at it too, which I encourage you to do. But it's just a good skill set to have to make confident offers out there.